Yeah, when you align these with your customer, it's very, very powerful. And these principles do follow patterns, like what you're talking about there in terms of the order in which you're serving your customers and you're taking through a stage.
If you're in the business of selling knowledge or expertise, chances are that you're trading time for money. And that's a fine way to start a business. It's not a great way to grow a business, and it makes your business almost impossible to sell. That's why we're going today to be talking about how to transform your valuable IP into products and stop trading time for money. And to help me out today, I'm here with Jeremy Takoti. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing good, James.
Now,
Thanks for
Jeremy
having me.
is an ex-media guy like me. He used to work in the print media before moving to video. He's the founder of Mastermind Secrets. He knows a lot about how to scale businesses and how to exit businesses. And we're going to be deep diving into this topic about transforming IP into products. But also, I understand that you were among the first producers of video streaming in the world. You produced a video streaming platform like in 2006. Is that right?
Yeah, it was a massive project. I was in print media, as you mentioned, and I had the insight that the world was shifting away from print media and into digital streaming, video production type products. And so I built one of the first video on demand platforms. Unfortunately, I had some on the launch. It's a big story, but on the launch of that, I had an incident where a satellite wasn't able to be connected to a pay-per-view live stream.
Oh, don't you hate it when that happens?
Well, it's, these days we can do it from our phone, it's kind of like, but back then, even just the software to do it was like $80,000 just for the connection, let alone all the production costs and those sorts of things. So it was a big deal. And, when you do a pay-per-view, you've got, people buying at scale. And if they don't get the pay-per-view live, there's a lot of people that want refunds, and the promoter loses sponsorship money and all those sorts of things. So unfortunately, it took a long time to set up. But I unfortunately had to close that business on its live event, on its live launch. So it was a bit of a debacle. But yeah, in terms of the process of delivering media, doing media licensing, being able to take a niche market and create, either an event or an experience or a training, and then deliver it again to a niche market. That's something that I got into, in the early 2000s. Although I've had other businesses, that's remained a lot of the core of my coaching and my private services.
Well, I want to say hats off to you, because that was 2006. And in 2006, I was running a print magazine made of paper and ink that was trucked around the world, and then set off in planes and trains and automobiles to places like Barnes and Noble and Borders. But
hats off to you, because as that sort of a model, you actually, even back then, you had to be offering something really clear to a particular market, and so it still would have been educational in terms of recurring revenue streams, setting up like subscription based. So part of your income model would have been advertising within the magazine, I'm guessing, and having a subscriber base as well as your on shelf sales and distribution. So there's a lot of things about that. There's a lot of things about that business model that have actually, direct response marketing was a little different in print media, but a lot of that has actually carried over to the online world. And interestingly, there's still a lot of opportunity within niche markets and doing things like print media. But but the market has changed, obviously, in the last 20 odd years.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say, is that direct mail marketing was the precursor of all online marketing. You know, if you knew how to write a letter that was going to get a subscriber, you'd know how to write an email or a long form page of copy. Now, you have 7 principles or 7 laws.
So there's, when we talk about turning your IP into a product or a service or a program, there are these kind of 7 principles that operate behind that process that are really worth sticking to. And it's kind of like a best practice insight that can help you avoid a lot of problems, especially if it's your own IP and you're doing it for yourself versus you helping someone with that process. So these laws, sometimes when you say 7, and before we started recording, we were talking about this, James, it can be a little bit overwhelming. You say like, well, there's 7 of them. It's not, why can't we just have 3, and because the reality is, we could chunk it down to 3 concepts, and we could talk about, well, how do we make something that helps us survive in the market? And then how do we move then into something where we can make it more sustainable? And then how do we free up our own time, and operate and self-actualize and do all those sorts of things? We could chunk it down to those 3, and that would be true. But when you unpack the reality of actually turning your knowledge and your experience into a product, you'll generally find that there's a little bit more than 3 steps to that process.
Always. And 7 is a beautiful magic number. I mean, we've got the 7 dwarfs and the 7 seas and all the other stuff that goes with it. Indeed, guys and girls, I'm going to try and include a link somewhere around here. Jeremy's got a cheat sheet, which is content to cash. It's his content to cash cheat sheet. And that means that if we do have to run through these 7 a little bit too fast, you can get your hands on that and wind up in Jeremy's world. So look for a link that's somewhere underneath this video. Shall we start off with the first of these 7 principles? And just to remind you, this is if you want to take that wisdom, that knowledge, that know-how out of your head and start turning it into something that you can sell, that you can introduce to multiple people simultaneously all at once, shift from selling one-to-one to one-to-many. That's where we want to go. Remove you from the execution of the key executioner within your business so it can grow and scale, and maybe you might want to sell it one day. Where do we want to start? What's our first principle?
So yeah, James, so basically you need to know who your ideal customer is, and you have to be serving them with your zone of genius. Mm-hmm. So the first principle, the first law is you have to know who your customer is, and you need to be able to serve them with the thing that you are the strongest at.
And it's an interesting dynamic. It's an interesting dynamic because if you've got a clear target audience, right? If you've got target audience clarity and you know what your genius is, if you can say this target audience is going to get the maximum most value from what I can do, that's a winning relationship. I see people do it slightly differently. They go, there's a target audience that makes sense to me, and there's a lot of them, but they might not be the ones that are going to have the most money or are the ones that are going to get the biggest impact. And there's also other people that go, I'm going to focus on that target audience because they make sense logically, but I don't necessarily like working with that target audience. I've seen that as well too. But if it's your zone of genius and you have those 2 things, that's a wonderful combo. What do you mean by zone of genius, Jeremy?
So zone of genius is, there's a process. It's probably a bit too big to go through today, but there's an exercise called Ikigai, which helps sort of with this insight, but where you look at what you're really good at, what the world needs, and there's a way of zoning in on it. But that if you were to look through all of your best successes in your life and your past experience and look at the common themes of where you did well, you'll often find sort of these indicators of your expertise or what you're naturally gifted at. And it really does make a difference when you tap into that. And without getting too esoteric, I do believe we're all here with gifts and skills and potentially a purpose. And being able to tap into that to deliver whatever your genius is, it does bring a sort of an extra dynamic to the table, rather than just copying something, looking at a process, and then just trying to sell it to make money. So it can take a little bit of awareness around, zoning into your zone of genius. And one of the things that is difficult for entrepreneurs is often they're so busy doing so many different tasks within their business. Sometimes there are other things that you have to do to put yourself in a position where you have the time to be doing, your best work within a business. And that's also true for when it comes to, creating either a business that's ready to sell, or for you taking your knowledge and your systems and your skill set or your insights and actually creating a product or a program that you can then scale. So usually it's having a keen insight of where you did well, and also feedback from the market. Sometimes this is kind of a thing that's interesting. Sometimes we can be really good at something and not have any awareness that it's actually a real unique thing.
Well, I was going to say, as an action, and this is what happened to me, I went, well, how do I know my zone of genius? And someone said, ask some people. And I asked my business partner, and I asked my clients, I asked a good friend of mine, Simon, and they came back and told me what my zone of genius was. And
there's a really common exercise.
Cool, that's great.
Yeah, there's a really common exercise. It's been written about in a couple of different books, but where you write a letter to the people closest to you, and you ask them to share both your strengths and your weaknesses. And
that's confronting.
Maybe. Well, it is. It's quite a. But you would get a lot of insight around that. And I'm not saying you should absolutely do that, but definitely if you know that you're good at something. I'm a passionate martial artist. I've been in the martial arts as a student for most of my life. And if you're to go in and have a real conflict, it makes no sense to use things that you're not good at, or to try things that you're not good at. And to a certain extent, when you're taking something to the marketplace, there's a battle for attention that's going on. And so it doesn't make sense for you to not use what you're good at. And so this first insight, again, we could unpack that even further, but knowing what you're really good at, and then being able to fine tune that to a specific market, which actually ends up being the second law. Knowing who you love to serve, who can pay you, who can actually benefit from that program or that product or that service. As a baseline, it's just good practice. And sometimes we can be really good at something, but unfortunately the market won't pay for it. So it does take a little bit of, sometimes it does take pivoting or adding another skill to what you're good at. So sometimes you could, so sometimes you could be really good at a particular thing, but then adding, and I'll use this as an example, video production. Maybe you're no good at video production, but you're really good at, teaching and presenting. Sometimes you can outsource that other component that helps you deliver that genius. So there's definitely that element to it. But unless you're clear on who your ideal client is, and you serve them with your whatever your X factor or your zone of genius is, you're just starting sort of on the wrong foot. So that's a really great place to start, which brings us sort of to the second rule or the second law, is where by having deep knowledge of who your ideal customer is, that you can solve a unique problem or a specific pain point in a unique and profitable way. So law number 2 is solving a unique problem or a specific pain point in a unique and profitable way. Now, sometimes a problem, you can reframe that as an opportunity. So you could say, create a unique opportunity for a specific market. You can reframe it like that, because not all offers are pain related, but being able to think of it in that way, where you're reviewing, let's say if you think about all your past clients and you think about which clients got the best result, there's a principle which I know I'm sure you're aware of, James, called the Pareto principle. You can actually recognize that, of all of your income, that 80% of your income came from 20% of your clients. And so by honing in on the elements of both the client and the problem that you're solving, which is creating 80% of the results by 20% of the market, you can make it much easier for you to be financially successful when you take your product to market. I actually believe that you should do an 80-20 by 2, where you look at your results, where you look at 20% of the 20%. So if you have 100, it's like one in, the 4 out of 100 type of dynamic, or 5 out of 100 type of dynamic, where you really hone in. And that principle, and again, we can get sidetracked, that principle actually follows power laws to do with affordability, meaning 80% of the market will pay a certain rate, but there's 20% of the market that will pay 10 times more, or have the capacity to pay 10 times more, because their level of affluence is on a different level. So it can help to be aware of some of these things. Yes, you can take a product to mass market, and it can help to be able to scale something that's a fairly low ticket and then have a higher ticket offer. But when you're solving a unique problem or a specific pain point for a very unique audience, very often you can go from a very some kind of lead magnet or very low barrier to quite a high product, mastermind, service, whatever it is, where people are paying a lot more, simply because you've fine-tuned it to that unique market. It's like a message to market match type of dynamic.
And it seems to resolve itself in a roundabout way. If you've got the target audience clarity and you've got that zone of genius, the reality is when you look at the target audience, suddenly you begin to understand their headaches. If I meet marketing people all the time, who's your target audience? Anyone that needs marketing services. And then every now and then someone steps into our world and we spend a little bit of time on this. But one of them that I remembered was a woman that went through this process, down to her 20%, Jeremy, her name was Sarah. She was a generalist marketer, and she looked at her people that she'd been working with and settled on wineries. Now, if you talk about like a unique problem that they have, a USB, suddenly the language all shifted. It wasn't, I'm a generalist marketer that can do everything for everyone. It becomes, I help wineries sell more wine online and at the cellar door. And suddenly when you have that level of clarity, you can increase your rates to reflect the impact that you're going to make, because you can dive into that business and truly appreciate and understand, which means that suddenly, instead of charging a small amount an hour, you can charge a lot more an hour, or indeed you can package up your services into something greater. Or if you're an expert on masterminds like Jeremy, you could pull together all the wineries into a massive mastermind and then teach one to many. All right, number 1, target audience and clarity plus zone of genius. Number 2, deep target audience clarity, but understanding their pains in a unique and profitable way.
Yeah, so you're solving a unique problem or a specific pain point in a unique and profitable way. Obviously, it's got to be profitable.
Yep, specific
and
problem,
the other
unique pain point. Say it again.
So solve a unique problem or a specific pain point in a unique and profitable way.
Right,
another way, the short of it is like that 80-20 rule.
80-20 rule. What's number 3?
So number 3 is that you need to control the system of service that you provide. Okay. And as part of that, you need to be able to create systems and automate and optimize and scale your delivery of those services. So I learned this one the hard way, as we were talking about earlier. When I built that video on demand platform, even though the system of delivery was my platform. The software that was handling the streaming, I did not own and I did not control, and also didn't own any satellites. And because not at the time, no, I still don't. But because I didn't have complete control over the system of delivery, it massively affected my capacity to deliver the service. So that rule where you control the system of service you provide, yes, you can absolutely use software as service. Okay, so for delivery, sometimes we might use like a Kajabi or a ClickFunnels or a Coach Marketing Machine or a Thinkific or whatever. And technically, we do have to be a little bit careful because we don't own those. They, the owners of that could change elements of that delivery. But that's probably about as far as I would go in terms of acceptable risk, because to give a good story, a while ago, I had a friend who had a business selling chatbots, basically building out messenger chatbots. And there was a time period he built a business up, 7-figure business, fairly quickly, developing these basically chat maps of the conversation to lead the customer through to doing certain actions. And Facebook made a change to their policies. And overnight, you couldn't use chatbots on Messenger, and his business collapsed overnight.
Yeah.
So and he had to, pay money back to clients who had prepaid for service and those sorts of things. So you just have to be aware that you need to be able to control the delivery of the service. And if you are leveraging off something which you have no control over, it can be very easy for that to fall apart. Another thing that we've seen more recently is platforms banning people. And without going down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories and, free information.
There's a couple of high-profile people that built massive profiles on international platforms and had it taken away from them.
Had it taken out, and overnight their capacity to reach their audience, to deliver their service, or to do their business completely taken away from them. So it's just when you're building something like this out, you want to be aware of how much control you have over the platform and the mechanisms of delivery. And my recommendation is you need to have some backups, so that even if in the event, let's say you're using a Kajabi to deliver a coaching product or a program, to back up those videos somewhere off platform. Might be just as simple as a Google Doc, and you might have a Vimeo account where you've got those same videos and you've just got a link list on the Google Doc with those same videos, so that in the event that something happened, maybe that platform crashed, you have some kind of backup where you're controlling the mechanism of delivery of whatever the asset or the information is. Because otherwise, like I experienced, like massive problem, because I didn't actually control the software that was being used to do that live streaming. It cost me more zeros than I have fingers and thumbs.
Guys and girls, you've heard me bang on about this 1,000 times, but I always talk about building your list, building your email list. So if you've got the email addresses of your audience, that's an example of backup. And I know people that get all their customers and clients just by posting stuff on social media. And then they use that to sell by chat and they start a conversation. That's all great. Another example of this is that if you're using social media, do whatever you can to get your audiences off social media and into your database. And if you've got them in a database, even if it's a wonderful tool like B2B Dash, export that database every now and then and back it up somewhere else. Now, what's number 4?
So number 4 is that you need to be providing greater value than the cost of doing business with you. Okay, so provide greater value.
Obvious, doesn't it?
It's kind of obvious.
That's a big one.
Yeah, but ideally that's double or 10 times or more.
Yeah.
Sort of anything more than double. So if you're charging $5,000 for a $10,000 valued product or something that provides a $10,000 return, we'd say that's a two times return. the products and programs that do well is when the value proposition is just in orders of magnitude more than what the risk of the investment is.
Yeah.
And so anytime you're creating a product or a program, you want to be over delivering. You want to be creating really high value. Now, having said that, sometimes that value can be delivered in something like a cheat sheet, where a key, just an insight for the person has a monumental impact on the person. So you don't have to limit yourself always to, always like a monetary type return, but it's helpful for your customers to make a decision when they are very clear on the value to them, and it's way more than the risk of their investment. So law number 4, always provide greater value than the cost of doing business with you.
We talk about something called the fist pumping moment, right? So you're selling a fist pumping moment. But if you can make it quantifiable, even better, a quantifiable fist pumping moment. What I know is, I say, what do you do? And people say, we save them money. And then we'll say, by how much? Or they say, we'll help them make more money, but how much? Often those things aren't these fist pumping moments. It could be like having half a day extra back in your world, like half a day every week to do the things that you love. That's a fist pumping moment, and it can be quantifiable. It's interesting you said greater value than the cost. If that can be articulated almost in the first sentence, you're onto a winning product. We had a product called 16 VIPs in 6 weeks. Get meetings with 16 very interested prospects in 6 weeks. And it's very easy for someone to listen to that and go, well, if I had 16 meetings with very interested prospects, I'd only need to close 4. And then I wouldn't only need to close 4. I'm going to close 4. 25% on a bad month, right? So the brain goes, how much is 4 clients worth? A number appears in their head. And then if the price for our product is half that, quarter that, or indeed in most cases 1/10 of that, who's not going to say no to that? If they've got the money, they're going to say yes, because it's greater value than the cost, and it's even articulated in the name.
Yeah, and when it comes to hooking attention, which is going to be one of the key elements of getting your message to the market, that ability to quantify the value of what you're doing, that could actually be, when we look at the 80-20 rule, 80% of your results could be coming from the headline.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in terms of connecting with your ideal target audience. So that what you've said there, James, is perfect. Your ability to articulate quantifiable value in a way that the language means something to the audience. That's a very powerful skill set to be able to do. And it wants to be able to pass something that's called the grunt test, where within 3 seconds they understand the sort of the opportunity that's being presented to them. So it's a simple insight, creative, but it actually does have far-reaching connotations when you unpack it.
And it's so much easier said than done, though, this grunt test. But what I will say is that if you've got target audience clarity and you know your zone of genius and you're prepared to go that one step deeper, it does become easier. Like that woman, Sarah, before. We sell, what was it? We sell wine online and at the cellar door. And what's crazy, she increased her rates 5-fold because that passed the grunt test.
Yep.
And they went, well, I know that if we sell this much more online, or if we get this many more visitors at location, we're going to make this much more money. And if her fees are a small fraction of that total number, it's going to be an absolute no-brainer. And she actually went from having clients that would grumble about paying for all her services because they couldn't necessarily see the value, to people, lining up to say, I want to work with you. What's number 5?
So number 5 is unhooking the exchange of time for money.
Ooh, here we go.
Which is a big one.
Now we're into it, aren't we?
Okay, so you want to be able to set up an asset that delivers the value of the service that is independent of your personal time. So this is literally where you unpack your IP, you put it in a process, and you automate it in such a way that you can still deliver value without the need for your physical time at a one-to-one level, meaning each time you deliver that information, if you were to do it manually, person to person, you're limited by how many hours you want to work. Whereas if you can create a product or a package or a program, and this is really what the huge opportunity at this, that we're all, people that have valuable knowledge, is that we can actually create these automated processes that deliver value, and it can be done at scale. So often law number 5 is
it's often better than if you do it on your own. This is the crazy thing, because if you've got target audience clarity and you know what they want, and you're delivering, greater value than the cost, and you're doing it again and again and again, you get really good at rolling out these consistent experiences. Whereas if it's just you and them one-on-one, they might have an occasionally a more magical experience, but you can have an off day, or you can have an awkward relationship with a client because you've got different ways of viewing the world. People see this as a barrier. They go, people like working with me. I'm sure they do. But they also say things like, I don't want to undermine the value. I don't want to provide less value. Because if I said, if you can charge more for doing less, people immediately go, that's unethical. If you can charge more for doing less, people think that's unethical, unless you're delivering an extra layer of value or times 10 value, and then you are a godsend. Yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely conditioned to using time and our personal skill set as the delivery mechanism for value. And that's unfortunately, it's a byproduct of our school system. But the reality is people just want the problem solved most of the time, or they want to take advantage of the opportunity. And so if you can systematically create a process by which they can actually get that result, you don't need to be tied up in that. And this as a dynamic is crucial for business owners, because one of the realities of business is there's only so many hours in a day. So this principle applies to building and scaling a business, where, whatever skills that you've developed that you initially are taking to market, that you hire other people to deliver those skill sets. You'll still need to create standard operating procedures. So if you're a business owner and you already have a team, sometimes you can turn those SOPs very, very quickly into a product or service that has huge value for someone else in that same business, or sometimes in an alternate business that could use those, best practice standing operating procedures to create that result without your need for time. So obviously you need to measure and optimize for customer experience. You need to be aware of, that automated process actually delivering the result. But just that dynamic of starting to think about not using your time for money is a mental shift, but it's a game changer for people when they're hitting that ceiling of their income, and they want to earn more, but they still want to have a life. They want to spend time with their families. They want to have holidays and do, not necessarily be a slave to the business. Starting to think in terms of systems and being able to automate things it's a game changer.
Unhooking the exchange of
time for money.
You said something good as well too. You said they actually don't want you. They want the fastest path to a solution. They want an outcome. And what I've found is that when I'm selling to someone, if I've got my fist pumping moment, particularly if it's quantifiable, that has someone's attention. The next question that they have is this right for me? And if you've got clear target audience and you say it, they go, that's great. If you've got social proof, that's even better. And you probably will, because it's tied to your zone of genius. And then they ask, how quickly is this going to happen and how much effort is required? Speed and effort. And if you've got some sort of method or methodology, it's funny, you think that they're going to prefer working with you, or that's going to be more reassuring to them. You get as much access to me as you want. You can call me 24/7, 7 days a week, and I'll be there for you. We think that that's what they want. No, they want speed. with the least amount of effort. And if you've got some sort of process or methodology, that kills it. Number 6.
So number 6 is recognizing that money is a form of energy.
Ooh.
Okay, money is a form of energy, and it flows through your connections with people.
All right, we're gonna have to unpack this a little bit.
Yeah. So money is a form of energy. It flows through your connections with people. So basically, the insight is you have to protect and nurture your connection, your real connection with people. And this is a interesting one when we're thinking about this. Is a little bit, can feel like a bit of a paradox, where we're unhooking exchange of time for money. But now we're saying, okay, money's flowing through people. It can raise some of those thoughts of, oh, well, I have to be the one to deliver it. Now that's not as we've just discussed, it's not true, but you still need to protect your relationships. And the easiest way to do that is to create a product or a program that delivers what you say it's going to deliver. And that experience of them getting what you say they're going to get as a baseline helps protect that relationship, because as time goes on and maybe you develop other programs, or you have another higher ticket level of service, or if we again look at that power ladder, people are people, and they will still buy from people they like and they know and they trust. And so those laws of influence absolutely still apply. So you have to be ethical. You have to be delivering what you say you're going to deliver, and really protect your relationships with people, actually often over the exchange of money. So your relationship with people actually needs to come first before the money exchange. And again, it's just kind of one of these best practice insights to recognize that, money is exchanging from place to place, but it's most often still being done from person to person in some form. Obviously there's exceptions, but it's, even if you think about your brand relationship to the customer, the same rule applies.
There's a couple of elements to this. One, I was talking before about fist pumping moments and quantifiable fist pumping moments. When you deliver a fist pumping moment, that is an energy. I mean, like, the language in it articulates what it is that they're getting. They're getting that wow moment. A lot of people think that when they sign a customer or client, that is when the sales and marketing journey is over. No, it's over when you onboard them and get them to a place called first win. When they get that first win, then they are a sticky client. Then they are yours forever. The other piece, it's interesting that you mentioned the whole energy piece. People give energy to their clients by giving them one-on-one time and FaceTime. I often, FaceTime sounds something like I'm talking about Facebook, but I'm talking about real world FaceTime, spending time in cafes and restaurants and even nightclubs, right? That used to be the way that we used to build relationships. It's so different nowadays, but we use automation tools all the time. And people say, I don't like using automation tools because they feel less authentic. And my clients like this personal touch. Well, I'll tell you what, as Jeremy said, your clients like wins more than personal touches. They like outcomes and fist pumping moments more than personal touches. And here's the crazy thing. If you can create a system, if you can unhook the exchange of time for money and also control the systems that you use, control the systems of service, if you can do all that, you have more free time. And when you have that free time, you can deliver that more meaningful, intimate moment when someone is really struggling, or they just post something in your Facebook group, or they SMS you, late at night, which they wouldn't normally do. They must only be doing it in an emergency. You can handle that and deal with that and give someone the next level support that they need and they deserve, because you've freed up all this extra time and it doesn't feel like they're dragging you down. It just feels like a wonderful addition to help them and make your life and their life better.
Yeah, and that's very difficult to deliver or nurture your customers in that kind of way when you personally are just strapped for time. Like if your attention's been pulled every which way because of all of the things that you got to do. It's very, very difficult to deliver. And again, this is one of the things that is very powerful about creating a product or a program or a mastermind. You know, people are kind of shocked when they recognize how much time you can free up. Like some of the programs that I've delivered in the past or delivering now are an hour a week or an hour a fortnight. And I'm talking about, 5-6 figures a month type income for 2 hours a month work. And that's mind blowing to most people. But it's one of these things that I've helped, hundreds of people replicate as a system where it's just life-changing and frees up so much more time. And part of the beauty of that is you can use that time with intimacy is kind of the way to describe it, is to increase the level of high touch points with your customers to ensure that they're actually getting the result, or if there's a stuck point that you have the time free to do it. Now, obviously, there's still limitations to that, but you're in so much better. You have such a better opportunity to do it by changing this as a business model. And again, this is where running having a program or having some kind of software of service or something that automates the delivery of the value, it can be a game changer. There's still work in doing that, like work up front to get it to market. And obviously there's always things to work on to improve the product or the service, but it's a very different business model from working 40, 50 hours. If you've been a business owner, you'll know that those 50 hours are probably 60 plus hours a week.
And the time worrying. I mean, like I've gone through this journey. I mean, like I've gone through this where I ran a print magazine that was very scalable in its own way. And then the GFC hit and that went the way that it did. And suddenly, I was out there on my own, hustling, as a consultant, really not knowing where my next bit of work was going to come from before I began to productize my knowledge. But I remember a time, Jeremy, this is the opposite of today. So today, this is something that happened a couple of days ago. I got a press release because I still get press releases sent to my email inbox every now and then. And it was something of very much relevance to one of our clients. Now, this is not an expensive client. This is a $300 a month client, right? And we have a couple different levels as well too. So we have, we have the Blazers and we have Momentum and we have Momentum Plus, some other different ones. Anyway, so this is like probably the lowest, close to the lowest level, I think, $300. And I got that press release and I went, oh, this guy would really be interested in this. So I forwarded it to him. Right? Now, if this was at that time where I was hustling for work and really struggling, I may have only had about 4 or 5 clients. And if I saw something like that, I would have been reluctant to forward it because then they would have replied and then we would have had to have a conversation and that would have meant more work. And I was so drained. So I was afraid of even connecting with my clients in a meaningful way because I was so exhausted. Yeah. Now, a $300 client, I'll flick them something because I see it. And what's crazy is that we might have 100 people on that platform. And I think I know probably about 80 of them, and I can have these conversations and know a little bit about them and engage with them and deliver helpful in a meaningful way because I have so much energy and time, which I didn't necessarily have back then.
And that's a game changer because the reality is when you're good at something and you love what you do, working with people that are benefiting from that is half of the reward. Like obviously you want to get paid for it, but when you truly are passionate about the thing and that connection to people and seeing them get the result, like that's such a powerful life affirming, dynamic. And when you're exhausted and you're, chasing your tail and wondering where the next dollar is going to come from, it's very difficult to deliver that type of service. And
deliberately avoiding providing a next level of service because I knew that it was just going to create more work for me. Whereas now it's a very different scenario. I think we're up to lucky number 7.
We're up to number 7. Okay, so This one's a little bit philosophical. If you want to think about this with your clients, you want to always help create unity and facilitate a pathway to a higher purpose in yourself and your clients. Now, in practical terms, it does help when your business has a bigger why, like you're helping as part of a greater cause. That's really good business practice. And it's also very empowering for us as people. But just thinking about how you're working with people, if you're promoting them being in a state of wholeness and health, and them being more empowered to follow their highest purpose, whatever that is just really good practice. And so this last principle, number 7, if we think about, 7 as kind of a magical number, that ability to help facilitate their pathways to their highest purpose. It's just really good practice. And sometimes this can be as simple as what you're saying there, James, being able to reach out and help someone when they're stuck. And when they're unstuck, they're back on that pathway of living their highest purpose by serving their clients, which, it's a cliche, but it's very, very powerful. So whether this is aligning your business to a bigger picture or a highest vision, that is useful. But also as you're delivering your products or your service or your experience, is just being mindful that you want to be promoting wholeness and good health and their ability to fulfill whatever destiny they're choosing for themselves. It's just really good practice.
It's funny because Jeremy and I have never really had a long conversation like this before. And the earliest piece of the puzzle was target audience plus zone of genius. Now, you don't know this, Jeremy, but in our business plan, we talk about native genius. And that's one of our goals, to free up our customers and clients' time so that they can fully live their own native genius. So it's interesting that that should be the first one. That's not in our marketing materials. That's just in our internal business plan. Now, the other bit there is that we have mapped out the journey that we take our clients on. And we take them from a stranger to a suspect to a prospect to a client. And during each of those stages, it goes like this. Strangers, we help them tackle their headaches. Suspects, we help them manage their obstacles. Prospects, it's all about aspirations. And then when they become clients, it's about their bigger desires. Headaches, obstacles, aspirations, and desires. And we've learned from experience that we can't help strangers with their desires. We can help them with their headaches. We can't help suspects with their desires. We can help suspects overcome their obstacles because their brain's going, this won't work for me. There'll be some reason. They'll go, that energy line about money energy, that's a bit woo-woo. I'll come back to that too. Prospects, you can't sell them their desires. You've got to sell them their aspirations. We're going to focus on this one thing, this fist pumping moment. We're going to get that right. And then we can talk about the bigger picture. Then when they're your clients, you can really go nuts. The trust is high. Everybody's got a bigger picture story. And I love this because what did you use? Higher purpose. Higher purpose. It ties back to this idea of zone of genius.
Yeah, when you align these with your customer, it's very, very powerful. And these principles do follow patterns, like what you're talking about there in terms of the order in which you're serving your customers and you're taking through a stage. Like I've got a whole bunch of different models that line up with that are very, I don't know if you can see this in terms of thinking about funnels and thinking about how this can be delivered. It does typically follow very predictable pathways in terms of how you're getting their attention and then how you're taking them through that experience. This is a separate subject, and maybe it might be beyond the scope of today, but it's a very interesting process to start to understand your client's attention as a funnel.
Mindset.
Okay, so
their mindset is a funnel. Yeah.
Well,
consciousness at its simplest is sentient and awareness of internal and external.
That's kind of funny.
Is that Siri?
Go Siri.
Go Siri.
Yeah, on my iPad. That's kind of funny. Yeah, consciousness as a funnel. when you start to really deeply recognize patterns and know your ideal customer, you can see how your process of connecting to a customer, getting their attention, opening their interest to getting engagement, channeling that desire that they have, helping them get in alignment with the value proposition that you're saying and their own fears and their own hesitations around actually taking action, helping them get in alignment. That follows it follows a very, very clear process, but it also mirrors a deeper insight into human consciousness, which you can map. And again, it might be beyond the scope of today, but I'll just flash the model for a bit of a.
Oh, there we go. Well, what I will say is that, and we don't have much time, but what I will say is that there's going to be a link underneath this video when we post it, and you can get access to Jeremy's content to cash cheat sheet. But also share this one as well too, because this is the image that originally got us talking, which was this idea of looking at mindset or consciousness as a funnel. If you could talk through this in
really quickly,
90 seconds.
Yeah. So there are different. So if we think about attention as a currency or as a energy that is, it's kind of invisible. We are creating our world experience from our attention, and it follows predictable patterns. And the way to think about it is, in order to take someone from someone who's not aware of you to buying your product, it goes through fairly typical marketing phases. So you can see here, we have to hook attention, we have to open interest, channel emotion, align value, and have a clear action. But when you look at what's going on, to get someone's attention, you need to be tapping into their identity, who the person is. So when they're at this level of, in terms of product awareness or unaware, to hook their attention, one of the easiest ways, if you knew their name, would be to call their name out.
Yeah.
So like if I say James, all of a sudden that hooks your attention.
It's the same with target audiences. If I say, are you a lawyer? All the lawyers stand up. We call it the doctor on the plane test. If you jump on a plane and says, there a doctor on the plane, the doctors say, yeah. If you say, is anyone on the plane excited by health and mindfulness? Everybody looks at each other funny, and clearly you don't have your target audience nailed down.
Yeah. So this phenomena to do with attention is that people are processing the world through their identity.
Yeah.
Okay? So the situation that they're in and what they're looking at is largely being filtered through that identity. And then when you unpack what they're thinking, and you can map the language that they use, the frustrations that they've had in the past, their fears about the future. When you can actually map this, because there's exercises to map that, what you'll do is you'll actually start to tap into their emotions. And again, we don't have time for it today, but this is like a hack on the human operating system. And when you look at how you position your message and you take people through these steps, from their identity, matching how they're thinking, you channel what their emotions are, you make sure that their values are aligned, or you reframe their beliefs or their values, you can compel action. And it's this very, very powerful mechanisms of influence. Again, you can map it, and you can position your products and your services in such a way that you can
take them on a journey. So I'm going to bring this full circle, and because we need to wind up. But the first thing that you talked about of the 7 things was the target audience clarity and the zone of genius. I thought it would be fun to see what your zone of genius is. I don't mind sharing what other people have told me. I'm still figuring it out. I don't think anyone's quite got it right. But yeah, I'd like to hear what you would put down in that box, even though I know it's a fluid, flexible thing.
Yeah, so I'm very good at pattern recognition. So you can introduce me into someone else's business and I can reverse engineer what's going on, what's going wrong, what they're, money that they could be getting, that they're missing out on. But the key skill that I have is pattern recognition.
This is funny, my friend, because I said we'd never had a long conversation like this before. I wrote down shortest path. That was one of mine. Shortest path. So trying to work out all these different things of entering someone else's world, meeting their chaos, and then turning it into something that makes sense.
Yeah, and if you can combine that insight with presenting it again to a customer or a prospect in a way that makes sense to them, that shortest path has so much value. Like if you have someone that's stuck with something or wants to make a change in their life, and you have that key or that insight or that software that you build or something that helps deliver that, because we're selling to people, it really is an important reminder to recognize that you're actually changing lives with that. And it's cool when you're really good at something, that you can put it to good use, do something for good rather than maybe for evil.
Well, I think this is a good place to wind up, because as I said, we've got a cheat sheet below here, content to coach cheat sheet. And also I'm sure there's a whole bunch of people that want to get their hands on the diagram that had words like chemical and neurological and electrical, other interesting things there. We've been talking about how to transform IP and to stop trading time for money. And we've talked about some pretty big picture stuff. But as you just heard from Jeremy, completely unprompted with his answer there, prompted with the question, he talked about finding patterns and being able to, I reframed it slightly as finding the shortest path. If you would like to have that type of experience with Jeremy, particularly if you're a knowledge professional, you sell knowledge and expertise, and you want to start digitizing your knowledge. I mean, Jeremy he's the founder of Mastermind Secrets.com.au, but even just from the smallest piece of the puzzle, if you want to start digitizing your knowledge, your expertise, you want to map it in a way where you can slowly release it and transform it into something a whole lot better. Jeremy's a great guy to have a conversation with to give you that level of clarity in your business. So any final words of wisdom before we wind up, Jeremy?
Oh, just thanks for the opportunity, James. Like you're doing a really great service for the industry, bringing such a large number of, experts together. And it really is a powerful opportunity for the people, watching this that have access to you, to your insight, to your expertise, and, the things that you've built and you're building are so valuable. And so I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity for me, but also on behalf of the customers that are watching this, because I know how much work goes on behind the scenes, even though you've created templates and processes to expedite it. And this is not your first rodeo. I know how much work is involved with this. So I appreciate it personally. And on behalf of the people watching this as well, you're doing great things. And, thank you for the opportunity.
Well, I'm flattered. Now I look forward to being on your podcast, and I can say the same thing to you at the end. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for your 7 laws, your 7 principles, your 7 steps. Pay attention, guys and gals. I hope you take notes. Thank you, Jeremy.